All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott Horton. I appreciate y'all tuning into this dang on show today. All right, our first guest today is Mike German. He's a former FBI agent, now with the ACLU. He is Policy Counsel on National Security, Immigration, and Privacy. Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us today. So let's talk a little bit about your career in the FBI. It says here that you thwarted several terrorist attacks. Now, I haven't heard of a legit al-Qaeda being in this country since Moussaoui. So who did you prevent from blowing something up?
I worked a case in Los Angeles in the early 90s targeting neo-Nazi skinhead groups that were involved in some violent activities. And then later in the 90s, in the mid-90s, with anti-government militia groups up in the Northwest.
Oh, really? And they were going to blow stuff up when you stopped them?
Yeah. Fortunately, I was able to separate them from their bombs and either buy them or recover them before they were able to use them.
Were you involved in investigating the Oklahoma City bombing case?
No, I wasn't. Most of my work was undercover, so I wasn't involved in sort of post-explosion investigations.
Okay. Well, were you undercover at Elohim City?
No.
All right. Well, I figure it's worth a shot.
Sure.
Right. Interesting stuff. So there's so much stuff in the news about expanding powers of the FBI. I'm not even really sure where to begin. I think one of them at the top of my mind recently is something about expanded power of the FBI to seize all of our internet records without so much as even a national security letter or any kind of authorization whatsoever. Is that really right?
Well, I think you're mixing up a couple of different things. There is a request that the FBI has made to change the definition of transactional records in the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, which would open up their obtaining a lot more information about Internet activity than they currently have. But one interesting thing when you talk about national security letters and the FBI's use of Patriot Act powers is that the Inspector General last year issued a report on the FBI's abuse of this authority through so-called exigent letters, where the FBI created fake emergencies to demand records even without any sort of legal process. And one interesting part of that report, the FBI, after years of acknowledging the Inspector General's audits uncovered this illegal activity, instead put forward what the Inspector General called an alternative novel theory for why they were allowed to collect this information without any legal process, information about toll calling records. And the Inspector General asked the Department of Justice in 2009 to review it, and in January of 2010, apparently the Department of Justice okayed the FBI's new interpretation. Now, that section of the report is very highly redacted, so it's unclear what exactly the FBI is claiming, and the Department of Justice is acknowledging that they're allowed to claim this type of data without any legal process and without any emergency. So it's, part of the problem with this secret surveillance society is that it's hard to have a public discussion about what the authorities are and what legal authorities regulate them when we don't even know what it is they're doing.
That's funny. Yeah, I think I just coined a new one. The era of the novel legal theories, right? None of these things are about the broad interpretation of my liberty. They're all about the broad interpretation of the state's power.
Right, and it's interesting to argue over these legislative initiatives when we don't even know how the government is interpreting the language that's being used in these laws. So it's really a problem when we actually have secret laws that that the layman, that the member of the public, can't understand.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Well, now, how many years were you in the FBI?
16 years.
Okay, now, was there a point where you just said, I just can't take this anymore because the change has come, it's so much different than it used to be, or it was the same thing for 16 years was finally too much, or what was your perspective on this? Was there a breaking point, that kind of thing?
There certainly was a market change after 9/11, and having been involved in terrorism investigations previous to 9/11, and understanding what the problems were with the FBI's management of those cases, it was very frustrating to see that the management of the FBI presented these theories that conflicted with the facts as far as what the problems were, and a justification for more authority rather than addressing the real management problems that caused the breakdown. And unfortunately, because they were able to pull off that sleight of hand, cases that I was working, one case in particular, were continuing to be mismanaged to the point that an illegal wiretap had occurred and misuse of an informant. And I reported that misconduct through the chain of command, and unfortunately the FBI wasn't really interested in finding out what the problems were within the counterterrorism program, and instead retaliated against me.
Well, so you were really a whistleblower, went through all the official channels and everything, and they fired you, or what?
Well, they didn't fire me. I just wasn't able to do any work. They sort of put me in the penalty box, and after 2 years of trying to work through the system to get it corrected, it was clear that the process was simply broken and wasn't going to work, and it was just a waste of my time to do the New York Times crossword puzzle every day and not be able to use what I had learned over a 16-year career to actually try to help the FBI manage its counterterrorism program.
Well, so I guess this is something that I've kind of picked up talking with former FBI agent types along the way here on the show, I guess really starting back with Frederick Whitehurst, back, 10 years ago now or something, I guess is when I first talked to him, pretty close. And basically I think what I learned from Fred is the FBI bosses don't care about anything but the FBI, and all FBI agents are supposed to love the FBI more than their own family and whatever, and the highest priority is simply making the FBI look good or covering up anything that makes the FBI look bad, and anything else, whether it's prosecuting John Gotti or stopping Ramzi Youssef or anything, is 10th on the list. After it's like a big PR organization that has no other purpose but to serve itself. Is that your interpretation? Is that what you believe about the FBI?
That's pretty close. When I joined the FBI, I went to the FBI Academy. It was a childhood dream. I was interested in that from the time that I was a little boy. And when I got there, there was this mantra that was taught to you, which was never embarrass the FBI. And I thought that meant, never do something illegal, never do something inappropriate, never do something that would bring disrepute to the FBI. But as I was in the Bureau and learned how it worked, and particularly after 9/11, what I learned was that it's really don't reveal the FBI's excesses, don't reveal their mistakes, don't reveal them to the public. So I think that is pretty much another way of saying just what you said, that it's more concerned with its image than with actually getting the job done.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, after September 11th, something that happened was there's a big debate, and, David Frum, don't anyone ever forget this, with Richard Pearl proposed that we create a new American MI5. The FBI's just not up to it. In fact, I interviewed Peter Lance years and years ago, I think before the Homeland Security Agency was created, when it was still the office. It was 2004 or something. And Peter Lance, at least at that time, reluctantly supported the creation of the Department of Homeland Security because he said, anybody but the FBI. Just forget it. The FBI cannot be relied on to protect the American people from terrorism at all. Forget it. They are absolutely worthless. They're worse than worthless. They're in the way. And if it's got to be some kind of new agency, I hate to create a new agency. He's politically, he ain't into that kind of thing, but he said, that's just, I guess, what we'll have to do. And it does seem to me, Mike, and I guess this will be my question for when we get back, is whether you think that the change of the mandate to the FBI, that now they're to have this preventive role instead of a prosecutorial role, was really just used as them by an excuse to go after everybody but terrorists with those kinds of new powers. That's what it seems like to me. And so that's the question. We'll be right back with Mike German, former FBI agent. He's at the Campaign for Liberty and the ACLU.
You can put the Liberty Radio Network on the air in your area. Visit broadcast.lrn.fm to learn how. Broadcast.lrn.fm.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott. I'm talking with Mike German. He's a former FBI agent. And now he's with the ACLU. And he apparently writes for the Campaign for Liberty as well. CampaignForLiberty.com. And, you know, I just got to wax philosophical about the ACLU here. Where would we be without the ACLU? I remember realizing as a real little kid, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know, 6th grade or something, watching 2020 on Friday night, that like, wow, so if these people don't make it their business to sue the government, it doesn't get sued. If these people don't make it their business to defend the rights of the innocent, they don't get defended. Somebody's got to do it. And that's what the ACLU is. And I don't agree with them on every single thing. I wish they were a hell of a lot better on the 2nd and the 9th and the 10th Amendments and whatever. But you know what? I'll take it. Because if it wasn't for them, we would all be slaves right now. That's the fact. Now, that's not even a question. The question, Mike, actually, it was 2 of them. I tried to make one question out of it. It didn't really work. The first question is, do you think that it was a good idea to create the Department of Homeland Security? Because is the FBI that worthless and incompetent at protecting the American people from attacks? After all, you don't want to just prosecute Muhammad Atta's dead body after he kills 3,000 people. You want to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And then secondly is, are they just using the excuse of this preventive role to just bludgeon all the rest of us?
You know, this was sort of one of the big misleading efforts that the FBI engaged in, because the fact of the matter is the FBI was always an intelligence agency and a law enforcement agency in one. There was literally 2 houses within one agency. And on the foreign counterintelligence side, that was the side that you know, looked for KGB spies and other sorts of foreign threats. And when international terrorism became a problem, it sort of didn't fit that FBI's model very well. They weren't exactly foreign spies, but they weren't, you know, they appeared to be more than just criminals, so what do we do with them? And they basically split the terrorism baby in half, where if it was domestic terrorism, it was treated as a criminal matter, and if it was international terrorism, it was treated as an intelligence matter. So rather than acknowledging at the very beginning when 9/11 happened, that it was the intelligence model that failed, that the criminal justice model actually was pretty effective in combating terrorism domestically and internationally once a bomb actually went off. You know, whether you look at the First World Trade Center bombing or some of the East Africa embassy bombings, the criminal justice side of the FBI it was actually very effective. And I think the reason for that is that it was publicly accountable. You know, it had to go through these trials where the evidence that they collected was tested, where their methods were tested. So they had to sort of keep the shop clean. On the intelligence side, however, they never got tested. There was never any house cleaning. It was one error after another. And you know, unfortunately, rather than acknowledging what the problem was, because if you look through the 9/11 Commission report, all the problems they identify are on the intelligence side of the house. None are on the criminal justice side of the house, literally none. So, you know, if we had identified that problem, I think the answer would have been pretty simple, to empower the criminal justice side of the FBI to tackle terrorism. But instead, we went into this intelligence model. And, you know, the problems with that model are so long-standing and extreme, and not just at the FBI, but at every other intelligence agency, foreign or domestic, that it's just a problem of methodology, that the type of information that gets bandied about is never tested, so there's no reliability to it, and yet people make decisions based on it. And that's why there are so many faulty intelligence reports, and why somebody's personal dislike for a certain political group often ends up in these, you know, broad investigations, you know. And you know, we've seen that with the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, where an ACLU